Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. I am Seema Shanai and today we are going to talk about figures of speech. A transport epithet is a little known but often used figure of speech in which a modifier, usually an adjective, qualifies a noun other than the person or thing it is actually describing. In other words, the modifier is transferred from the noun it is meant to describe to another noun in the sentence. An example is I had a wonderful day. The day in itself is not wonderful. The speaker had a wonderful day. The epithet wonderful actually describes the kind of day the speaker experienced. Another example is cruel bars. The bars press inanimate objects and therefore can't be cruel. The person who installed the bars is cruel. The bars merely serve to foster the person's cruel intentions. Another example is sleepless night. Similarly, the night is not sleepless. It's the person experiencing a night during which he or she cannot sleep who is sleepless. Because transferred epithets provide a vehicle for metaphoric language, writers often employ them to infuse their works with vivid imagery, as the following examples show. We're coming close to those little creeks now, and we keep a discreet silence. By Henry Hollenbach. The silence cannot be discrete. Silence is a concept indicating a lack of sound. It is no intellectual capacity. It's clear that the author and his companions were being discreet by staying silent. In the 1935 letter to fellow British poet and novelist Stephen Spender, essayist, poet, and playwright T.S. Eliot employs the transferred epithet to make his feelings clear. He writes, "You don't really criticize any author to whom you have never surrendered yourself, even just the bewildering minute counts." Eliot is expressing his vexation, probably to criticism of him or some of his works. It's not the minute that is bewildering, but rather it's Eliot who feels the criticism is bewildering and likely unwarranted. By calling the minute so, Eliot was trying to elicit empathy from Spender, who as a fellow writer would likely have understood his frustrations. One shouldn't confuse transferred epithets with personification, a figure of speech in which an inanimate object or abstraction is given human qualities or abilities. One of literature's best examples of a personification is a descriptive line from the poem Fog by acclaimed American poet Carl Sandburg. The fog comes in little cat feet. Fog doesn't have feet, it's vapor. Fog can't come as in walk either. So this quote gives fog qualities it cannot have. Little feet and the ability to walk. The use of personification helps to paint a mental picture in the reader's mind of the fog steadily creeping in. An oxymoron is a figure of speech that puts together opposite elements. The combination of these contradicting elements serves to reveal a paradox, confuse, or humor. An example is, my room is an organized mess or controlled chaos, if you will, same difference. The above phrase is packed with oxymorons, including organized mess, controlled chaos, and same difference. For something to be organized, it cannot be a mess. Chaos is anything but controlled, and how can something be different and the same? The answer is the oxymoron. We use many oxymoronic phrases in everyday speech, often to add some humor when to an otherwise ordinary sentence. Another example is act naturally. When sneaking around causing trouble or entering a stressful situation, we often advise people to act naturally. Of course, if one is acting naturally, one is not acting. Still, we understand the phrase because despite its contradictory elements, it makes sense. Oxymorons are important in a variety of ways. For one, they spice up everyday conversation with wit and humor. On the other hand, they also challenge audiences in speeches, poetry, and prose with confusing phrases that apparently contradict themselves, but upon further inspection make sense. Oxymoron encourage audiences to think beyond everyday logic in order to critically think about and understand paradoxes. In Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare uses a variety of oxymora: loving hate, heavy lightness, serious vanity, etc. An oxymoron is a phrase that uses two contradictory or opposing terms, while an antithesis is a device that presents two contrasting ideas in a sentence but not in the same phrase. These two should not be confused. The rising moon over the city dump presented a beautifully ugly scene. Here, beautifully ugly is an oxymoron. The quote, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," contains an antithesis because of the opposing phrases. In poetry, a stanza is a dividing and organizing technique which places a group of lines in a poem together, separated from other group of lines by line spacing or indentation. Stanzas are to poetry what paragraphs are to a prose. Stanzas can be rhymed or unrhymed with a fixed or unfixed syllable count. There are numerous types of stanzas ranging in complexity and length. A couplet is a couple of lines, a stanza made of two lines. Often couplets are used to mimic togetherness. A tercet is a stanza consisting of three lines. A quatrain is a stanza of four lines. Quatrains are very common in poetry. A quinton is a stanza of 5 lines. Stanzas are important because they meaningfully divide poetry on the page, setting it apart from prose and allowing certain ideas, moments, and themes to be organized uniquely according to the poet's intention and message. Stanzas create structural physically on the page and with certain rules like syllable counts and rhyme schemes that go along with them. Conversely, poems which lack stanza can communicate a lack of organization or a sense of forward movement, run on, or chaos. The decision to use stanzas or not to use them and of what type is an artistic mode of thought practiced by poets. A sonnet is a 14-line poem with a fixed rhyme scheme. Often sonnets use the iambic pentameter, which is 5 sets of unstressed syllables followed by stressed syllables for a 10-syllable line. Over time, the sonnet form has evolved. Here are the two most common types of sonnets written today. An Italian sonnet. The Italian sonnet consists of an octave, a group of 8 lines followed by a sestet, a group of 6 lines. The typical rhyme scheme is as follows: A B B A A B B A for the octave and C D D C D D or C D D E C E or C D D C C D for the sestet. The octave introduces a problem or conflict and then the sestet addresses or solves the problem. London 1802 by William Wordsworth is an example of an Italian sonnet. The second type is an English or a Shakespearean sonnet. The Shakespearean sonnet is named after Shakespeare not because he invented it but because he is the most famous writer of this type of a sonnet. Typically, the English sonnet explores love. Its rhyme scheme is as follows: A B A B C D C D followed by E F E F G G. William Shakespeare wrote 154 sonnets. Each sonnet is dedicated to one of the following: the dark lady, the fair youth, and the rival poet. A typical Shakespearean sonnet consists of 3 quatrains and 1 couplet. Sonnets are a classic poetic form which has been adopted across languages and around the world. Although free verse has popularized poetry free of form, rhyme, or syllabic constraints, the sonnet still remains a popular form in its own right. Sonnets have allowed poets to examine religious, personal, and political problems. To this day, sonnets are a popular form in literature. In Ozymandias, P.B. Shelley examines the passing of time and how, despite humankind's attempt to fight it, even the most fantastic empires may fall or turn into dust in the desert wind. A ballad is a poem that tells a story, usually but not always, in 4-line stanzas called quatrains. The ballad form is enormously diverse, and poems in this form may have any one of hundreds of different rhyme schemes and meters. Nearly every culture on earth produces ballads, often in the form of epic poems relating to the culture's mythology. However, the word ballad typically refers to the relatively short lyrical poems introduced by European poets starting around the 13th century. Many folk songs are ballads. For example, the Ballad of John Henry, also known as the Steel Driving Man. One of the most popular ballads is The Night Before Christmas by Clement Clarke Moore. Moore's poem is easy to remember because it has a simple rhyme scheme and a very predictable rhythm, and because the story it tells is a charming Christmas narrative. Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner is one of the best examples of a ballad. Ballads are perhaps the most ancient of all literary forms. The earliest works of literature that we know of are all mythological epic poems that tell the story of culture that produced them. Today, a ballad is still a great way to combine two separate forms of literature, like a novel or play, The ballad tells a story with characters in a plot line, but at the same time, it is a meter and rhyme of a poem. The combination of art form lends ample opportunity for creative and individual expression. A monologue is a speech given by a single character in a story. In drama, it is the vocalization of the character's thoughts. In literature, the verbalization. It is traditionally a device used in theater, a speech to be given on stage, but nowadays its use extends to film and television. A monologue speaks at people but not with people. Many plays and shows involving performers begin with a single character giving a monologue to the audience before the plot or action begins. There are different types of monologues. The first one is a soliloquy, a speech that a character gives to himself as if no one else is listening, which voices his inner thoughts aloud. Basically, a soliloquy captures a character talking to himself at length out loud. Of course, the audience and sometimes other characters can hear the speech, but the person talking to himself is unaware of others listening. For example, in comedy, oftentimes a character is pictured giving themselves a lengthy, uplifting speech in the mirror while a friend is secretly watching them. The soliloquy is one of the most fundamental dramatic devices used by Shakespeare in his dramas. The second example is a dramatic monologue, a speech that is given directly to the audience or another character. It can be formal or informal, funny or serious, but it is almost always significant in both length and purpose. The third one is an internal monologue, the expression of a character's thoughts so that the audience can witness or read in literature what is going on inside the character's mind. It is sometimes, depending on the style, referred to as a stream of consciousness. In a piece of writing, internal monologues can often be easily identified by italicized blocks of thoughts and express a character's inner thought. On TV and in films, internal monologues are usually spoken in the character's voice, but without seeing him actually speak, thus giving the feeling of being able to hear his thoughts. Monologues give the audience and other characters access to what the particular character is thinking, either through a speech or the vocalization of their thoughts. While the purpose of a speech is obvious, the latter is particularly useful for characterization. It aids the audience in developing an idea about what the character is really thinking, which in turn helps or can later help explain their previous or future actions and behavior. As a technique usually used in the stage or screen, the best examples of monologues in literature are found in dramatic literature, most notably in Shakespeare's dramas. A selection of arguably the most famous monologue in literature, a soliloquy, specifically from Act 3, Scene 1 of the tragedy Hamlet. This scene reveals to the audience that Hamlet is contemplating suicide. His words express an internal thought process that we would normally not be able to witness. The only reason that Shakespeare has Hamlet speak these words out loud is so that the audience, not anyone else in the play, can hear them. He uses a soliloquy to share Hamlet's unstable state of mind and disquieting thoughts. Another example is Mark Twain's The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County. Mark Twain was a literary genius when it came to storytelling. He could make the page seem like a stage with the way he used spelling and grammar to bring a character's accent and personality to life. A character in the aforementioned example is Wheeler. Wheeler's story is a dramatic monologue which Twain used to achieve the feeling of a real storytelling exchange between two people. His employment of this dramatic technique in the short story makes the readers feel like they are hearing Wheeler's story firsthand. In conclusion, monologues are arguably the most fundamental parts of onstage drama and dramatic literature. Without them, essentially only silent film and theater could exist, as monologues provide the only way for the audience to witness a character's thoughts. The formal definition of satire is the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices. It's an extremely broad category. The or in the definition is key. Most satires are humorous, ironic, and exaggerated, but they only have to be one of these things to count as satire. There are two important things to remember about satire. It makes fun of a person, idea, or institution. Its purpose is not just to entertain, but also to inform or make people think. Satire has been called the oldest form of social commentary. For people, the injustices and problems in their society are too big to confront directly. So one approach has always been to start with comedy. By laughing at something, we can acknowledge its reality while denying it power over our emotions. Satire also gets people to pay attention to social issues when they might otherwise ignore them. People may pick up a satirical book or watch a satirical movie hoping to be entertained but end up thinking about issues and perspectives they never thought of before. Satirists hold a mirror to the flaws of society, helping people think critically about things that might otherwise just have been taken for granted. Most political cartoons are satirical. They use humor, irony, or exaggeration to make a point about politics. George Orwell's Animal Farm is a dark satire of Soviet communism and Russian Revolution. Shakespeare's comedies satirize the politics and philosophy of his day, up to and including the royalty that patronized his work. The novels of Charles Dickens are frequently serious satire, simultaneously funny and genuinely meant to attack the institutions of Victorian Britain. Jonathan Swift wrote searing satire of 17th century Europe in Gulliver's Travels and A Modest Proposal. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment and subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the bell icon to get notified every time I post.